Hello to everyone watching. Welcome to our breakdown of UFC 296, Edwards versus Covington, the final UFC card of this year, 2023, from the T-Mobile Arena, and they loaded it for us. This is an awesome night of fights coming up this Saturday. Breaking it down now with Nick, as always. How are we feeling about this event?
Yeah, man, really fun card. It sucks we're going to be off for a few weeks, but yeah, nice way to end the year. We got a couple of title fights up top, and throughout the card, man, just really fun matchups. A lot to look forward to, and they usually do this with the last card of the year, so no surprises. Just very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm absolutely pumped. Thank you to all our viewers for the continued support this year. Our article, as always, will be available on Saturday prior to the event on Dine Sports. And but let's rip through this card here, starting with the main event at welterweight for the title. Leon Edwards looking to defend a minus 170 favorite against Colby Covington, somebody who we have seen in title fights before, and somebody who very well could break through here. As the new champion of the world. Now, I do feel Colby has a tough matchup here in Leon Edwards, somebody who is so sophisticated and technically sound on the feet. Edwards looked good in his first defense. I think, that could be a product of the opponent he was facing. Usman, once again, coming off a loss. It's also worth noting that was at home, the OTO Arena in England. But he's been the more active fighter. He's looked good in both of those performances against Usman. Although the first showing was not going his way for a large portion of it, he certainly did have his moments early, and then the moment that mattered, they're late. The knockout seems plausible in this spot, whereas most welterweight showings, you aren't really going to see two individuals engage and somebody put the other away. Leon Edwards does have that. We've seen it before, and I think Covington is going to be susceptible to that. Constantly pressuring forward in this fight, looking to close the distance on Edwards, because a fight taking place at range is not one where he's going to find much success. Covington's want to implement his wrestling in the spot. The average was 4 takedowns per 15-minute bout, so certainly higher in a 5-round atmosphere. Takedowns expected for Covington to convert. Edwards has proven to be solid in terms of his defensive or takedown defense, especially stopping the shots from Kamaru Usman. But Covington's a chain wrestler. I feel like he is going to be able to get to the legs of Edwards more than Usman was able to in their fights. I think Covington is going to secure takedowns in the spot. It's just a matter of if he can really keep Edwards controlled and limit the striking exchanges we see between these two. I don't think Covington's going to get wiped out on the feet. I think he has great boxing. I think he's going to be able to hang with Edwards for a large majority of this fight. It's tough expecting him to come out and shine like he has. Now, this being a 1 year, 9-month layoff since his last Octagon appearance, never a good sign, but we saw him come out, beat Woodley, and 2 years later come out, look even better. The way he performs in these big moments, I'm a big Covington fan, and Edwards is somebody that I don't view as highly of when it comes to the championship medal in the UFC. So I think it's a super competitive fight. I'm excited for this one, but I have been on Covington from the jump. I think his pressure and his offensive wrestling is going to be the difference in winning this world title. But super fun fight, super close fight, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's tough to have a lot of confidence in either of these guys. Again, it's just such a high level matchup. Obviously, in a lot of ways, it is a striker versus grappler. Colby, with the extensive wrestling background, definitely on Usman's level. So we have matchups where we can make comparisons. And obviously, we don't want to get into the MMA math of it, but Leon beat Usman twice. Usman beat Colby twice. And I mean, they're all older now, that whole group. But I mean, it did really show us a lot that Usman still looked really solid in his last fight against Kamayev. So I put a little bit more weight into those wins over Usman than I might have otherwise. To see Kamaru kind of survive that first round and then really give a good showing of himself, I think that does more for Leon's stock here than anything. But it's tough, and there's just a lot of outside factors here. I mean, again, Colby almost a 2-year layoff. That's never a good thing. The thing is, he's a wrestler. He's not like this crisp boxer who really needs to find his timing or anything like that. But at the same time, against Leon, he's going to have his A game when it comes to striking. The interesting thing here will be Colby's success in the grappling. I do think he's going to score takedowns. It's just, can he keep Leon down? Edwards in those Usman fights, he did something new that I think is going to become part of the MMA meta. Instead of just trying to defend takedowns, he's going to turn his back. He's going to try to break the hands. I think he did that better than anyone ever in maybe the history of the UFC, really using the hand fighting before they're on the ground as a means to kind of defend and create separation. Leon's a much better striker than Usman. Usman did have a lot of success in the striking against Colby, but at the same time, he's also a much better wrestler than Leon Edwards is. So I don't know. I think the fight's kind of lined about where it should be. This is going to be probably a pro Covington crowd. I know we have Donald Trump in the audience there. But to me, I don't know that that's like a great thing for Colby. Like, this guy is obsessed with Trump. And I mean, if anything, it's going to create some nerves. Like, I don't know. Has he been in the audience for Colby fights before? I don't know.
MSG,
yeah,
right?
yeah, I mean, he's really building this up in a weird way. And like, I don't know, it seems like whenever there's such a strong narrative like this, it almost always fizzles. And again, this is just nuanced stuff. Like, this isn't really a reason to be picking either fighter. My lean is Edwards, and it's mostly just because he has been active. We have seen him have success against a wrestler in Usman, who I consider to be very similar to Colby. Not quite as aggressive with the pressure or how frequently he's going to be shooting for takedowns, but I do actually rate Usman's striking a little bit better than Covington. So I think there will be openings for Edwards here, but I'm not going to say I'm confident at all. Like, this is one of those fights where it could very well be we're discussing the scorecards into the new year as we wait for the next UFC card, and it's like, was Control enough to win the rounds? And I mean, last week, if they have the same judges as Vegas, we saw in the Muniz fight, a couple other fights, that Control really was getting weighed heavier than it should be in the new scoring criteria, in my opinion. I think damage is first, and that's what these guys are trained to do, but we have seen at times that they are scoring the Control. So it almost comes down to who's going to be judging. I think if there is a finish, I agree, it's definitely Leon that finds it. I think more likely than not, this is a fight that goes 5 rounds. But when we're looking at the recent performances of Colby, I mean, he wasn't really able to finish Masvidal. Masvidal did have moments in breaks, and some of those exchanges did drop him at one point. But yeah, I mean, it's just been so long. So for me, I'm on Edwards here. I'm not going to say it's a confident play, but I do think he's going to be able to keep this standing long enough to kind of edge out those rounds. But at the same time, I can't be confident because I do expect Colby to score takedowns. Leon's takedown defense is up around 70% now, which is good to see. But at the same time, I mean, over the course of 5 rounds, like, it would be kind of goofy not to expect Colby to be able to take him down a few times. I will say, like, if there's a surprising outcome, I think it's Leon finding an early finish just because of the ring rust. But at the same time, again, it's not something I'm expecting here. I think it goes 5 rounds. I think it's competitive. I think Leon does enough to edge it out on the scorecards. And yeah, it just kind of feels like a controversial decision is what we're going to see here. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough to be confident either way. Colby's style is really tough. Leon has had issues at times with cardio. I don't really expect we see them here. Vegas isn't necessarily somewhere up in the mountains or anything like that where he's going to have to be sucking on thin air or anything. So I don't know. I like Leon, not a confident play. I'm curious what the over-unders are going to come out and look at. I'm imagining they're going to be like 3.5.
Gotta go to decision, yeah. I mean,
yeah, so there's not going to be a ton of value on those, but I mean, you could bet Colby decision only. That's probably a slightly safer angle. I'd be really surprised if you finish Leon. So if Leon were to knock him out, then you just get your money back. I think if you like Colby, that's a pretty safe angle. And then you could do Leon finish only. And I think either way, you might be covered. But again, I'm not going to be surprised if Leon can edge out a decision. He did well in those Kamaru matchups to make the time on the feet count, even though he was taken down consistently. So I get the Covington pick. It's a very close competitive fight. I don't think anyone should have too much confidence either way here, honestly. And if they do, I'd maybe kind of check their credentials. I like Leon to get it done, but again, not a confident play. I just think he can keep it standing long enough to probably edge it out.
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably line it pick him. I think it's just as close as you, and getting the plus money on Covington, that's the pick for me. That's where my money will be, but certainly a close fight. The co-main event, another title fight. This is going to be a great one. This flyweight title fight up for grabs. Alexandre Pantoja, minus 190 favorite at current against the underdog Brandon Royval. A guy that we've been on quite a bit. I'll let you take the lead on this one. You think Royval gets it done in his first title opportunity?
Yeah, if I'm being 100% honest, I want to spend a little bit more time on this one. I did rewatch their first matchup. And yeah, like you said, I'm a huge Roy Ball guy. We've made a lot of money betting him as an underdog in certain fights. Certainly his last one against Nicolau, back when he fought Kai Kara France. He's been kind of a money printer for us, but he's running into a matchup here against Pantoja, who was the last guy he lost against. In that fight, did a really good job in the first round. I thought he was winning the first round. Second round, gives up his back, gets choked out. You can see the frustration on his face. But that's the issue with Royval. I mean, he's kill or be killed, which works. He has done a better job kind of honing that in a little bit over his last few fights. But what makes him great is also what makes him a dangerous fighter to back. I do like that we're getting some dog odds on him here. He is my current lean. But at the same time, I mean, Pantoja has shown that he's great everywhere. Like, this should be a competitive matchup. Royval, when he's at his best, he's finding early finishes. Pantoja is super durable. That's not something we ever really see. As far as Pantoja being finished. So I don't know. It's just a tough matchup stylistically for Royval, but I do expect him to be the more aggressive fighter here. I expect him to land at distance. But if it is boxing range, Pantoja's going to have advantages of his own. And then when the fight hits the mat, I mean, both these guys are excellent in scrambles. So it's almost like if this fight takes place 10 times, like it could go 5-5. It could go either way, kind of similar to the main event in a lot of ways. So, I mean, if it is a true point flip, I guess there's just more value on the underdog. And he's been my guy. I almost feel like I just got to ride with him here. But I don't know. It's not a confident play. I mean, we were both on Pantoja over Moreno. That was a super close fight. He looked like he was gassing out after that first round, and then never really got tired. He just, I don't know, it's almost like Duplessis, where he looks very tired, but he can consistently keep the pressure on. We haven't seen Royval extended much. He did win a decision in 3 rounds over Bontarine a year or so back. He does train in that Colorado air, though. I don't imagine cardio is going to be an issue for him, but the pace he fights at is absolutely insane. So there's a lot of factors here, a lot of questions around what these guys are going to look like in later rounds. Because, yeah, we haven't seen Royval extended there before. And while we did see Pantoja extended against Moreno, a lot of ways that was back and forth. That was Pantoja leading grappling exchanges. Royval's very tough off his back, very dangerous, throwing up submissions, etc. So, again, I mean, we're breaking these down. These are just volatile matchups, which is what makes this card so great. I'm going to lean with Royval now. I think he probably does need a finish to get it done. But I'm hoping he can maybe clip Pantoja with something in the first 3 rounds, maybe jump on a choke or something like that. But I think logically, Pantoja is probably the play just because he is the more technically sound fighter. But yeah, I mean, Royval thrives in chaos, and that's exactly what he's going to create here. But yeah, I got to spend a little more time. Definitely check out the article Saturday morning for my final pick, because as much as I want to back Royval, I do want to spend more time on this one.
I echo a lot of what you said regarding this matchup. I do think, though, from a betting perspective, Pantoja would then be the play. A lot of what you highlighted, Royval kill or be killed, is absolutely true. A lot of these fights ending very early and at his hand, and especially in the 5-round atmosphere now facing Pantoja, I really do not see this fight going Royval's way if we see a round 2, if we see a round 3. Pantoja is super solid. I think he is going to be, and still this weekend, a champion that's not only skilled on the feet with his very good boxing, but the jiu-jitsu credentials as well. I think he's going to be able to nullify a lot of what Royval does best. And very early on in this fight, if Royval is crashing in, looking to explode, looking to land, knees and things like that to find that early finish, Pantoja is going to stay consistent. He's very good keeping distance, even as opponents try to close in on him. Good length for a flyweight. Obviously, Royval, a lanky one as well. But I think in this fight, he's going to have a lot of trouble just blitzing in on a guy like Pantoja, who is so crisp with his hands. I think as well, a lot of the submission attempts, things like that Royval has been able to, land or at the very least threaten with in the past, Pantoja will be hip to. Able to very quickly find escapes out of arm bars and things like that as these two are exchanging on the mat. And yeah, I think it's just a super finish reliant spot for a guy like Royval. We've seen him get it done before. It'd be cool to see him get it done again. But I certainly think the side who's going to be winning this fight more times often than not would be Pantoja. Um, I think my play here, I'll probably be using him to anchor a lot of my parlays, Pantoja, especially with Covington a dog, the last fight of the night for me. I would then hedge at that point with a Royval inside bet or, Royval in the early rounds, as I see that as his path to victory here. Again, as this goes late, we've seen Pantoja against what I would argue better competition, thriving in the past in the latter half of fights. And, his only losses are coming very late by decision against top quality guys. So I think he does prove to be the better fighter over the course of 25 minutes. But I think we're going to be in for some awesome scrambles early here. Maybe Royval could catch him with something, but I'm not going to be putting my money there.
Yeah, no, and I think you're on the logical side. And like I said, I want to back Royval, but I need to spend more time convincing myself. I wouldn't be surprised if I ended up on Pantoja here.
Yeah. Should be an awesome fight, though, for the flyweight strap. Another good one leading into that, the future bout at welterweight. Shavkat Rakhmonov still undefeated, a minus 700 favorite against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, a longtime staple of this welterweight division. I think this is an interesting fight. I think Thompson, some would consider a bit, obviously on the latter half of his career now, but looked great in his last performance. Pieced up Kevin Holland. I don't think we're going to see the same result here facing a guy like Rakhmonov. A lot of what worked for Thompson in that spot was his distance striking, was his spinning attacks. And a lot of that is not going to play here facing a guy like Rakhmonov. Rakhmonov is sound, very technically on the feet. He does get hit on occasion, but oftentimes you will see him with a high guard that I feel like Thompson will have a difficult time penetrating. And then Rakhmonov as well will likely take the path of least resistance in this fight and look to grapple at some point with Stephen One Boy Thompson. Kevin Holland wanted no part of that, just the guy that he is. But in the two fights prior, we did see Thompson quite convincingly handled on the mat. Rakhmonov has the credentials to grapple in this fight if he so chooses. He has half of these wins have come by submission, the other half by knockout. He has finished every fight that he has had thus far, and it could be more of the same here. I think Thompson's a super durable guy, but if these two are going to engage for periods on the mat, Rakhmonov should be able to, if not take the back of Thompson, at least implement a grappling heavy presence to open up strikes for him or submission attempts at some point that Thompson could succumb. Props to Thompson. I think he is still in it in this welterweight division. This would be a huge win for him to knock off a prospect like Rakhmonov. I just think that grappling X factor is going to be what decides this. If Rakhmonov wants to be an idiot and stand and strike with Thompson for 15 minutes, like Kevin Holland wanted to last fight, props to it. But and he does sometimes see red, Rakhmonov. He likes to throw down, but I think he's going to be smart enough to grapple in the spot, likely earning a win by submission.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm a little bit concerned about the game planning just because of how wide this line is. I mean, we're looking at minus 500, minus 600 on Rakhmonov. It's gone even wider now. We're looking at 650 is the most narrow line, but I think he gets it done. I think he gets it done on the mat. The path is clear. I mean, we've seen Burns do it. We've seen Luque do it. Or not Luque, Bilal do it. But yeah, man. I mean, against Jeff Neal, he wasn't able to secure the takedowns. He didn't really pursue them aggressively, but he did not take the path of least resistance in that fight. So that at least gives me some pause. Shavkat, very good striker, but certainly not on the level of a Thompson, in my opinion, especially not defensively. Very dangerous on the offensive end, but he is hittable, as we did see in that Neal fight, especially in the second round. I do think Shavkat gets it done. I do think he secures the takedowns he needs. I mean, Wonderboy does have a 64% takedown defense. Shavkat does a good job not only just shooting for singles or doubles with traditional wrestling, but using the body lock. And we've seen both Burns and Bilal have success doing that in the past. So again, the path is very clear here. But in the big cage, it's going to be tough to get him initially. And I mean, the success we've seen with Shavkat on the mat has come against guys in Magny, Harris, who are willing to grapple. So it's a little bit scary to back him at this price. I'll also say this. I mean, I think I had a bet on Bilal to finish Thompson, Burns as well on the mat, and both of those he survived to the scorecards. Shavkat, the more aggressive finisher on the mat. I'm thinking he gets it done inside the distance. But yeah, I mean, I'm fine kind of tying him to parlays, but if this does go to the scorecards, I'm not going to be surprised, even if it's 3 dominant rounds on the mat for Rakhmonov. Thompson, while he is somewhat easy to take down, he is not easy to submit. So I don't know. I like Shavkat here. I think he gets it done. It seems like the UFC is kind of setting him up for a title shot soon, if not next. I think Bilal weighing in as the backup probably is the next title shot. But there's definitely logic to having him on this card against Wonderboy with the title on the line in his division. I really do think they're building him here. I think he gets it done. Probably inside the distance, but at the same time, I mean, Thompson, man, I mean, he's shocked us in the past before. And I will say this too, Holland was able to take him down. He just let him back up the 2 times he did. So I think if Holland can take you down, Shavkat should have no trouble doing it. I just hope he executes the path of least resistance here because it's very clear. And he is priced as though he's going to. So I like Shavkat. I think he gets it done. But if this does stay on the feet too long, it could get dicey quick. But I'm with you. Rakhmonov, probably inside the distance, probably via submission.
There's one thing I'll add too. I think even on the feet, he's going to close the distance much more efficiently than Thompson. Even in a larger cage, he's not going to be lunging in with these long strikes. Rakhmonov walks forward, he pressures forward. He's going to look to create a pocket to engage with Thompson with during those exchanges on the feet. So I do like that. And then again, closing the distance more efficiently should lead to those takedowns, should lead to grappling exchange at some point. Next up, a fun one. A fun one at lightweight between Paddy the Badly Pimblett and Tony Ferguson. El Kikui back again. Back in the win column, maybe here facing Paddy Pimblett. Obviously, a lot can be said about this booking this fight. Paddy Pimblett, somebody the UFC has, notably been trying to build, given the following surrounding him even prior to his UFC debut. Proven to be a bit less than what the public perceived him. A bit more hittable, somebody who perhaps does not have the best fight IQ to this point, but also somebody who has delivered in the octagon thus far, somebody who is going to be more durable than Tony Ferguson, is going to be the quicker guy, is going to be able to, I think, again, execute on the mat, similar to the last fight that we spoke about here in this spot against Ferguson. A lot of what we saw at Pimblett prior to his UFC run was success via the jiu-jitsu in Cage Warriors. And I think that, utilizing the grappling here against somebody in Ferguson who does not present as much in terms of a threat from bottom position as he did early in his career now at this stage, I think could certainly help Pimblett in this spot. But Pimblett's also not afraid to let his hands go. The chin of Tony Ferguson, very fair to question. Seeing him knocked out Michael Chandler very badly, and finish in ways that, we had not seen the old Tony Ferguson finish. Certainly gives some pause in backing him, even as a large underdog. But if these two are going to strike, if Petty is going to just stand there, fight at range, look to win any way he can against Tony Ferguson, I think this is a spot he's a bit susceptible as a -320 favorite at current. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this spot. A lot of people just saying, Tony's dusted, no chance. Paddy, feed him this fight. But I don't know if you do it the same. I don't know if I do.
I mean, I've backed Tony in some of these losses on this losing streak. I mean, if he loses here, he's going to have lost as many fights in a row as BJ Penn at the end of his career. I mean, and it's tough to see, man, because Penn, killer in his prime, Tony, killer in his prime, and they really went out about as badly as possible. The thing with Pimblett, yes, he came into the UFC overrated, by myself included. I thought we'd see quicker improvements out of him. The issue with Pimblett is the striking defense, 41% defense. Really terrible. I mean, it's not like he's been facing an elite level of competition at all. His chin is there in the air. He's there to be hit, but he is durable. So he's taking these clean shots that would knock out a lot of people. But at the same time, he's kind of surviving them and then winning, I don't know, ugly, for lack of a better word. The thing with Tony is, yes, he's far past his prime. And I mean, I'm listening to interviews coming into this fight, as I always do. And Tony's doing a good job selling himself as he always does. I don't think I'm going to let him fool me again this time, though. A lot of narrative this week that he's been training with David Goggins, who's like former military, really effective like mind coach and runner. And well, I don't think Tony needed help with his cardio. I do think it is helping him kind of keep his head on his shoulders. But I don't like a lot of what Tony's saying, that he's been sandbagging, that he was like kind of losing on purpose so Khabib would want to fight him. Like, this is all nonsense. And yeah, I mean, he looked good at times in that last fight against Bobby Green, but then he was submitted by Bobby Green, who's a boxer. And Pimblett does have the jiu-jitsu to probably find a finish here at some point. I think on the feet, Tony's going to be competitive. Paddy, I mean, made Jared Gordon look like an elite striker. Gordon's a pretty good striker, but certainly not on the level of Ferguson and Ferguson's prime. So I don't know. I don't know what version of Tony we're going to see here. I did see the photos from Media Day. He did not look great. I'm waiting to see what he looks like at weigh-ins. I'm probably not backing him regardless, but at the same time, I mean, the price is probably a little bit ridiculous here on Paddy, minus 300. But yeah, man, I mean, Tony's fooled me so many times on this run. I think I backed him against Green. Did I back him against Green? I don't know. I did back him against Dariush and Charles and Gaethje, and it's just getting sad at this point. Tony's been one of my favorite fighters, but I think he's just too gone at this point. And UFC knows what they're doing. Pimblett coming off a fight that he won, that he actually probably lost. The fans have turned on him. So now they're going to have him beat Tony and be really cordial and nice about it to try to build his stock up. I don't know if you noticed the embedded. They have him in hospitals, helping kids out. Like, they're really trying to get Pimblett's image back after that Gordon loss. And yeah, I mean, I do like Pimblett. I just don't know that he's this top 10, top 15 guy as maybe some people build him as coming into the UFC. Really don't think he's going to compete for a title, but at the same time, I don't know that you need to be that level of fighter in the lightweight division to beat Tony Ferguson at 39 years old, almost 40 years old. So, yeah, I like Paddy here to get it done. I think the long layoff was probably great for him. I think he knows he has holes in his game. I heard an interview with Bisbing talking about how they call him Batty because he's batty defense on the feet and things like that. Like, he's self-aware, and he's doing less of the blowing up in weight, just being an obese fighter between his fights. And he has 2 kids coming. I mean, he has something else to fight for here instead of just the legacy and all that. I mean, he has twins that will be born very soon. I don't know exactly when, but his wife will be in attendance. It just sounds like his head's on his shoulders. He was humbled a little bit, even though he did beat Gordon, which I think he needed. And yeah, I just hope he doesn't take Tony lightly here and try to stay with him too long, because Tony can still drop guys. I mean, he did almost secure a knockdown against Bobby Green. I think it was a bit of a slip. He had a great first round against Michael Chandler. In his prime, I'd say he would be the better wrestler here, but his wrestling really hasn't looked good. So yeah, I'm backing Pimblett here. I mean, if this was Tony a few years ago, I think the line should be flipped, but it's not. And Pimblett is still young enough at 28 to make improvements. I don't know that this is a fight we're going to learn a lot from with Pimblett, unless maybe he loses. But I am going to back him here. I do think he gets it done. Am I going to be shocked if Tony pulls it out? No. But at the same time, I mean, I just can't buy what he's saying. I mean, in the Okamoto interview, he's like, I will beat him. I'm going to make him bleed. Like, it's so convincing. And Tony just does such a good job of selling himself. But he's fooled me too many times to be fooled again. So I'm going to go with Pimblett here. I do think Pimblett's overrated. I do think the line's too wide. But yeah, the UFC knows what they're doing. There's a lot of business being presented on this card. Like we said, Shavkat as the feature fight on a card where he'll likely be fighting for that 170 title soon. That had Gary in the same spot before that fight got pulled off. There's a lot of business dealings on these cards to end the year, and I think they're doing some housekeeping. Tony still makes like $200K, I think, to show or something like that. So they'll probably cut him, unfortunately, after this. Maybe we see him in the new PFL Bellator combo or Karate Combat, something like that. I still think he could fight. I just don't think he should be fighting these top 15 lightweights anymore. So love Tony. Wouldn't mind seeing him win here, but I'm going to back Pimblett.
All right, the main card was slated to begin with a fight between Ian Gary and Vicente Luque. That fight is off. Ian Gary will not be fighting this weekend. Vicente Luque might. They are perhaps going to find an opponent for Luque, but one would figure at this point in the week that fight will not be going on, and no word yet as to what fight would be elevated to the main card. But we move on now. The featured prelim, about at featherweight between Josh Emmett and Bryce Mitchell. Bryce Mitchell, a minus 220 favorite in this spot against the plus 180 Josh Emmett. Josh Emmett is coming off 2 consecutive losses, although they be against rather elite competition. And Ilia Topuria fighting next for the featherweight title, and Yair Rodriguez, former interim featherweight champion. So 2 very highly skilled opponents that Emmett did lose to. Mitchell not nearly on the level of those guys. However, I think this is a stylistic matchup where Emmett is going to find himself in a lot of trouble once again. Josh Emmett has just 46% takedown defense in the UFC, and Bryce Mitchell averages 3.5 takedowns landed per fight. I certainly think he is going to employ that grappling pressure per usual in the spot against Josh Emmett in hopes of getting a win. Mitchell suffered a loss to Ilia Topuria as well, but bounced back in a big way his last time out. Looked very good against Dan Ige, secured 5 takedowns, really controlled a large portion of that fight, even after absorbing a healthy number of shots back from Ige. That was a good back and forth, and I think Emmett is going to be able to hit Mitchell a few times on the feet. Sometimes that's all it takes from Emmett. He is a tremendous power puncher. Certainly one is weary for, if he could stuff a couple takedowns and, connect a few times on Bryce, but I don't expect that to be the case. Mitchell's able to execute takedowns against guys with better takedown defense than Emmett. So I feel like he is going to be able to do so in this spot here. Emmett a bit thicker, bulkier than Dan Ige, but defending half as many takedowns is a major concern. I think Mitchell's going to be able to implement his game plan. Looks to be back on track based on that rather recent performance that fight against Ige, and I think in this spot against Emmett, he's going to be able to do a lot more of the same. Implement that grappling and get a victory, whether by submission or by decision. I did have Emmett, or I had Yair Rodriguez by round 2 triangle choke in his fight against Josh Emmett. I'm not sure I'll be playing any crazy props like that, but Mitchell by sub does not seem like a bad look in a fight that's probably lined to see the judges' scorecards.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you're saying. I do think the fact that this fight is on just 10 days notice for Bryce, though, is notable. I was listening to an interview right before we hopped on this, and he was saying he was on top of a ladder building a barn, and he's like, when I have power tools in my hands, I feel really confident. So I said yes before I even came down off the ladder. And I don't know, Bryce is a funny guy. Definitely one of the best grapplers in the division. I don't know that I fully buy into the Emmett takedown defense. A lot of those have come against guys that don't typically shoot for takedowns, things like that. Emmett does actually have a wrestling background. He does fight out a team alpha male with a few other guys on this card. Andre Feely, who's fought Mitchell in the past. Tyler Diamond also fights out of that camp, another guy that Mitchell's fought against. So I don't know. I think Emmett's going to be pretty prepared here. At the same time, I see what you're seeing. Mitchell's definitely going to be able to score the takedowns. I just wonder if Emmett's going to be able to get up easier or quicker than Ige did. And if he does, I think he hits even harder than Ige. 2 of the hardest hitters at 145. Mitchell's eye was swollen shut after that fight against Ige. So I don't know. This is kind of similar to the co-main. I could see myself going with the underdog here. I think there are paths for him. Mitchell does seem hittable at time in exchanges. He's going to have to keep Emmett on his back, which is tough to do. Topuria took him down a bunch, but Emmett did consistently get up. And he did have moments in the 4th and 5th round, as bad as he looked in that fight, where he was still landing. He still had the crowd going. Just a super tough guy. And not a guy that I think is going to fold if he gets taken down a few times. He's going to be live as long as this fight is going. So probably needs the knockout. So if I do back him here, maybe this is another situation. If your book offers the finish only, I don't know. I know we saw Emmett sub against Yair, but Mitchell hasn't been finishing as frequently recently. And yeah, I think a big part of that was that Emmett was rocked against Yair when he fell into that triangle. So I don't know. It's a tricky fight. I think at the current price, I'm leaning Emmett, but this is another one I want to spend a little bit more time on. I do think the clearer path for victory is Bryce's here, but at the same time, I want to see what he looks like at weigh-ins compared to when he usually weighs in. I want to see how Emmett looks. He's had some rough weight cuts recently. But yeah, it's a good fight. I do think the line's a little bit wide though, and Emma's certainly live to find a finish on the feet. So very competitive matchup. One I'm definitely looking forward to. Do not fault anyone for backing Mitchell here as the much better grappler, but at the same time, yeah, not only did Mitchell take this fight on short notice, but Emmett agreed to it as well. So I think both teams are seeing something here. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be a good one. Do not be surprised if we see it elevated to the main card. Next fight, we'll break down women's bantamweight matchup between Irene Aldana and Carol Rosa. Aldana opening north of -200, now down to a -190 favorite against the +160 Carol Rosa. Some money coming back on the Brazilian. It is an interesting matchup. I mean, Rosa clearly stylistically it could find success against the boxer in Aldana. Aldana has improved in terms of her grappling, but Rosa certainly has the edge here in that realm as these two fight. Rosa does put out pretty good volume in terms of her, striking output, but Aldana is the much crisper striker, able to place her punches much better. And I think she has found better success as of late against upper level competition. While Rosa has put together some solid wins, they are against the likes of Yana Santos and Lena Landsberg and Betch Kohea. So nobody of the highest quality there. In terms of the two women's MMA bouts on the card tonight, this one I do feel rather not very confident in. I really could see this one going either way, depending if Rosa is able to implement some grappling or get into the clinch against somebody like Aldana. You can't just stand and strike with her, because I think a much longer and more sophisticated striker is going to find success if that's the style fight that we see play out. I'll let you take the reins on this one now, but I do think Aldana is going to be the pick for me as the favorite in this spot, although not confident.
Yeah, I'm not 100% decided, but another situation where I think I'm leaning with the underdog. I mean, we look at Rosa in her recent losses, and they're not even that recent, but Norma Dumont and Sarah McMahon, the only two losses in her last 5 fights, both of those primarily grapplers. Rosa's going to have the grappling advantage here. Aldana coming off that fight with Nunez, where she lasted to the scorecards, but she was dominated. I mean, historically, fighters coming off loss in their title shot, I mean, there's always a question of motivation. Can you get back on the horse and work your way back up through the rankings? And to get back in that position again, because it's definitely tough to climb the mountain and then get pushed off. So I think there is some narrative there. Also, I mean, she did have that liver kick against Chieson. I know I was on Aldana there, but she was losing that fight. And honestly, I think Rose is probably the better fighter compared to Mason Chieson. And it's interesting. I mean, this fight is what? It's going to be at 135 pounds. Rosa took her last fight against Santos, which was competitive, up at 145. So another situation where I'm kind of leaning on the underdog, but I want to see the weigh-ins. I think if Rosa looks good here, I agree. Aldana's the much better striker, especially at range. She's going to have a considerable reach advantage, but I think she'll be able to score a few takedowns. And if she does, this is going to look like a coin flip after 3 rounds. So again, I think I'm leaning on the value of the underdog, but another situation, especially in women's MMA, where I want to see the weigh-in, see how these two look. Aldana, again, coming off that loss to Amanda Nunez, historically not a good spot to be coming off a title loss. But yeah, I don't know. I think of all the underdogs on this card, I know I'm talking about Royval, talking about Emmett, but I feel pretty confident I'm going to end up backing Rosa here. I don't know. I just think there's value. She's 28. Aldana's 35. I think Rosa's continuing to show improvements. Aldana has been training with Alexa Grasso, which is helping her game. But at the same time, it's like, how much better can you get at that age in these divisions? So I don't know. I'm siding with Rosa here, somewhat reluctantly. Wayne's. I mean, she's had trouble making 135 in the past, and that's going to be very, very vital here.
Sounds like a convincing breakdown. Certainly feeling more confident than myself. So take a look for those viewing on the underdog side. This is a funny matchup at bantamweight. We have Cody Garbrandt facing Brian Kelleher. Maybe fight of the night competitor, maybe a quick knockout one way or the other. I mean, these are two guys, certainly staples of the bantamweight division, one would say. Garbrandt, the former champion, having quite the streak of bad luck, one may say, past couple of years, but bouncing back in a big way his last time out, getting an actual win over Trevin Jones. Going into that saying, "Oh, my body's broken. I'm falling apart at the stage of my career," but still putting on a good fight, a rather good showing by his standards. And, Kelleher coming off 2 losses himself as of late, choked out his prior 2 appearances in the octagon. Someone even older than Garbrandt, a 37-year-old bantamweight. That's always going to be a concern for me. So while I think he will have opportunities in the spot against somebody in Garbrandt who has proven to be chinny, Kelleher effective from both stances, but I view him more as a southpaw, more of a power threat with that left hand behind him, perhaps connecting with the chin of Garbrandt. However, over the course of a longer fight, I think Garbrandt would find more success on the feet. I think he still does have the advantage in terms of speed at this age, and his output is going to be more consistent than what Kelleher does bring to the table. It's going to be interesting to see these two if they do elect to get into a grappling exchange. Again, as I stated, Kelleher choked out his previous 2 octagon showings. Garbrandt, somebody known to mix in the grappling, but not to really excel with it or necessarily chase the submission. Where Kelleher is, always on that, whether it be looking for the neck with a guillotine or, what have you. So certainly interesting if these two do get into scrambles. If it's on the feet, will Kelleher land that big shot to put out Garbrandt? Could happen, but minus 200 seems like a fair price for the former champion here. I don't think Kelleher is as tough of a matchup as he could draw into at this stage of his career. It seems like a winnable fight for Garbrandt, and I'm going to end up backing him. But this is a spot where I find it likely he probably gets his hand raised.
Yeah, I will say Cody definitely is going to have a major speed advantage here. Kelleher, a long layoff. I think he had surgery. I'm trying to remember on what, but dealing with some major injuries, major surgeries, never a good sign, especially for a 37-year-old bantamweight. Garbrandt certainly far past his prime, but we're talking business on this card. I've heard no one bring this up yet, but some of the fighters on this card are going to be pretty well aligned to fight on UFC 300. I mean, Garbrandt, a former champ. There's some interesting matchups. Maybe you put him against Dom Cruz for the 2nd or 3rd time. Like, there's some historical matchups that Cody could be involved with, and I think maybe he lands on UFC 300 with a nice win here. Sounds like he's had a really good camp. As chinny as he is, I mean, when he is up at bantamweight, he is more durable. We saw in the Rob Font fight that he did sustain a lot of damage and his chin held up pretty well. Was not impressed with the Trevin Jones performance, mostly because he wasn't putting out any volume. The thing is, Kelleher's not really a guy to put out much volume either. I am concerned about Kelleher's power, and I am concerned about the guillotines. I mean, if Garbrandt is going to shoot for takedowns without being offensively sound, then his neck's going to be there. And I mean, Kelleher's 2 strengths are the power in his strikes and that guillotine. So he's live for the upset. But I think you just look at who these guys are fighting. I mean, yeah, Kelleher was taken out by Batista and Umar. I think they both take out Cody. But if you look at the wins he has, Kevin Kroom no longer in the UFC, Pilarte. I mean, going back through, the resume is just not that great for Kelleher. He's kind of a gatekeeper and not even for the top 15 necessarily. Garbrandt, as regressed as he is, still 5 years younger. Sounds like he had a good camp. Still has a decent head on his shoulders. So I don't know. I'm going to back Garbrandt here. Definitely proceed with caution, though. I mean, Kelleher certainly live for the knockout and the submission. But yeah, coming off a few surgeries at 37 years old, I think the UFC knows what they're doing here. Garbrandt certainly more valuable to the company than Kelleher at this point in their respective careers. But again, should be a fun fight. I do hope we see more volume out of Cody here. He was very aware of the power coming back at him against Jones. I think we could see a similar situation in this one. So you led with potential fight of the night. I mean, it could also be the most boring fight on the card if he's very hesitant. So I don't know. I like Cody here. I think he has the speed to get it done. He could probably bait Kelleher and do a shot or something like that. But at the same time, I mean, Kelleher does have fight-ending power and that guillotine, which makes it interesting. I think it's about line where it should be. I'll probably have a small play on Cody here, but it is tough to back him with confidence given the major regression we've seen over the past few years. But again, I just think it's 2 separate classes. Cody is a level above, facing much better competition, not really counting that Jones fight last time.
Yeah. That one should be certainly exciting. A booking now to open the preliminary card. We have a women's flyweight matchup with Casey O'Neill taking on Ariane Lipski. O'Neill, the minus 200 favorite in this spot. This is going to be a very telling fight in terms of the career trajectory for Casey O'Neill. Somebody who suffered a first career loss, professional loss in her last showing. A fight against Jennifer Maia that saw both women throwing down. Maya putting it on Casey O'Neill over the course of those 15 minutes. That was a bit of a brawl. And the fights prior to that, we really saw O'Neill against competition that I wouldn't view super highly. Roxanne Modaffari, one of her last fights, Antonina Shevchenko. Not really the best competition in terms of her wins, even though she was looking great against these girls. It really doesn't mean too much if you aren't able to implement it against these top 20, top 15 opponents. Now, Jennifer Maia is a long time a staple of the promotion as well. And, that was a tough fight for O'Neill. Not necessarily what she was expecting stylistically. Here, I think Lipsky is going to bring a fight with less, striking from range. She'll be looking more to engage in the clinch against somebody like O'Neill, and I don't really see that playing to her benefit. O'Neill's strong in those positions against a lot of these girls, and if these two are to engage on the mat at any point, I could see O'Neill going for the takedowns in this spot. But even if not, if these two get engaged there, I think O'Neill is going to be able to secure top position, rain down shots, things that we have seen her proven time and time again in fights, finishing bouts with ground and pound. Certainly a path to victory here against a fighter in Lipsky who hasn't really shown a great intelligence in terms of getting back to her feet when down there. So I think if O'Neill is the real deal, Lipsky is the type of opponent that she should be able to slice through in that manner. I think with the output we saw in her fight against Maya as well, she could just let her hands go and find success against somebody like Lipsky here, who's not the most skilled, not the best, placing her shots or putting out those prolonged combinations that we have seen O'Neill string together before. So minus 200 might not really want to jump all over the spot, but I do think O'Neill's going to be able to get the victory.
Yeah, this one's interesting. Both these girls recently, or relatively recently, shifted camps. O'Neill's now at Extreme Couture. Lipsky's now at American Top Team. And I think these moves were great for both of them. A lot of holes in their game. O'Neill, very high prospect. I did back Maya as an underdog against her last time out. If she would have gotten the wrestling going, though, I think she could have pulled that fight out. And I think she has to learn from that here. Lipsky, decent takedown defense, but not great off her back. Casey O'Neill averages just under 2 takedowns per 15 minutes, in spite of her lack of game planning that last time out against Maya. On the feet, Lipsky's very dangerous. Does a good job mixing in elbows, things like that. Like you said, works well in the clinch. But if this does get into the clinch, I do imagine Casey O'Neill goes for those takedowns. So yeah, I like O'Neill here to get it done, but she needs to wrestle. If she's not wrestling, this could get ugly. Lipsky's made major strides. Coming off a huge win against Gatto, definitely the best win on her resume, in my opinion. But if you watch that fight back, I mean, it was a low volume affair. Could have gone either way. I think it was on Gatto there, and I was pissed off about the decision at the time. But looking back, I mean, it was one of those where it's like, how do you even give a win to either of these two? Neither did very much. So that was a competitive fight with Gatto, low volume. If O'Neill has anything on the feet, it's volume. Averages just under 9 significant strikes landed per minute. A lot of that skewed because of that fight against Roxanne Modaffari a few years back where she threw like 300 strikes or something. But yeah, I think O'Neill gets it done here. I think she's got the right voices in her ear right now. I will say Lipsky's made major strides, though. I do think the line's a little bit wide, but it does seem to be closing. Looking across books now, I don't even know. I think FanDuel's the only book that still has this over minus 200. We're seeing a 185 DraftKings, a lot of 190s across the board. So as it narrows, I feel a little bit better about backing O'Neill here. But again, she needs to wrestle. If she doesn't, this could get ugly. But I think coming off a loss where she made that mistake, she will correct that this time around.
Yeah, expecting the same, a bounce back performance from Casey O'Neill here. Moving now to the early prelims, closing with a light heavyweight bout. Dustin Jacoby set to face Alonzo Menefield here in the spot. Jacoby, a pretty solid favorite here, minus 275. I do think he is way better, way more technically sound, a striker than a guy like Menefield. Jacoby, while he did suffer a loss previous to his last bout, he bounced back in a big way last time, stopping Kennedy and Chescu. Menefield's been on a bit of a tear himself, but you really got to dive into some of these fights that he's having. Jimmy Crute shooting in on him, giving his neck, getting guillotined. That was the last fight that we did see, a draw prior to that, and then not really the most impressive showings. I mean, a squash match against Mazarov, Misha Serkinov, who has no chin at all, Menifield was able to stop. So while it has been a productive year for the guy, I think this is a big step up in competition in terms of the skill of his opponents. Jacoby's not going to be somebody that's ever presenting his neck to Menifield in any sort of exchange. He's going to want to be keeping this at kickboxing range in the large octagon. I think Menifield's going to struggle a lot closing the distance, landing effective shots in a guy like Jacoby, who does have excellent striking defense, just a natural presence in a kickboxing fight. And I feel like over the course of 15 minutes, this sways more and more into Jacoby's favor. Menifield starts to slow, starts to play more at range with Jacoby, just to land that big shot. And against a high-level kickboxer like that, I don't see him finding much success. I will say Menifield's kind of tough to gauge, in terms of his aggression. If he is going to come out guns blazing in this fight, I could see him getting stopped by Jacoby. Jacoby has power. He's not just like a tit-for-tat kickboxer. He can put guys lights out. But if Menifield's going to take a more measured approach here, Jacoby should be able to pick him apart from range, using his longer weapons and, more sophisticated striking to get the job done. So I like Jacoby a lot in this spot. Probably a parlay piece, but certainly that price is getting up there, minus 280, or so.
Yeah, I mean, the fear with Minifield, he always has that one-shot KO power. I mean, if Jacoby were to get sloppy in exchange, he could get caught. I also think Minifield could have a grappling advantage here. Not usually a guy who leans in that part of his game very heavily, though. So I think Jacoby gets it done. The big cage should be helping him here, allowing him to strike at range, using leg kicks to kind of neutralize that power of Minifield. If Minifield were to pull off the upset, I expect it would be an early KO, but I think otherwise, Jacoby should be able to outclass him considerably. I like that you brought up the resume. I mean, Krug, decent prospect, but he really hasn't lived up to the hype. Other than that, I mean, Menifield's wins are not great. Lost to William Knight, very ugly to have on the record. And yeah, I mean, we look at Jacoby, he had that loss to Roundtree coming off that massive win over Smith. A lot of people thought he beat Roundtree in that fight, and then the loss to Mirzakhanov, fight he almost came back in after really struggling to get going. So he could be ranked very highly on a massive win streak right now if a couple things bounce differently for him. I like him. I think he's pretty much line where he should be. I agree you could kind of tie him into parlays. Fights early enough too. If it doesn't go your way, you could rebuild. But yeah, I think Jacoby gets it done. Just a much better striker in a fight I do imagine takes place primarily on the feet.
All right, moving on now to a bout at flyweight between Tagir Ulanbekov and Cody Durden. Durden, the underdog in this spot, plus 135. On a tiny little win streak himself as of late. I mean, he's been performing well. A high pressure wrestling, sort of a key of his in his fights, the ability to just go, wear on guys. A bit wonky striking, but effective out of the southpaw stance. Certainly facing a guy like Ulanbekov, I don't think Durden is going to find much success in terms of keeping this fight on the feet. He is going to need to make it a dogfight, make it gritty, bring Ulanbekov to the mat, drag him down, and watch his neck in doing so. But if able to execute on all those levels, I feel like he is going to be able to shine in the spot. Ulanbekov is somebody who, while efficient, a striker and grappler, not the best in either area. Certainly, I think he is going to have the edge. The reach is going to be a factor here against Durden. 3 inches at flyweight seems like a lot. And Ulanbekov is a long 70-inch reach. So I think he is going to use that to great effect on the feet. But when it comes to that grappling, if he's not able to wrap the neck of Durden, this guy's going to wear on you, rain down shots from top position, keep control, keep you on the mat. And, we've seen Ulanbekov kind of taper off in the latter half of fights where that's normally where Durden starts to get going. I think he's a super live dog in the spot. I think my pick is going to be Cody Durden, despite the skill set of Ulanbekov and the fact that I very much worry about that guillotine choke that Ulanbekov is able to pull off. We saw it in his last fight. And if Durden's going to be shooting multiple times here, presenting his neck, I very much worry about that getting, cinched up. Not only in his last fight, Ulanbekov has a couple guillotines to his resume. So I do worry about that choke. But apart from that, I could see the dog, cashing here in the spot. I'm going with Durden.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I'm kind of with you on the dog, I think. Ulanbekov is the better striker, definitely more dynamic, works well at range. This is Southpaw versus Southpaw, which is interesting. These guys are both 32 years old, which is interesting. They're both primarily wrestlers, which is interesting. I mean, this is a really well matched fight. I think it's going to be competitive. I do think Tagir is going to be dangerous with the submissions, though. We have seen Cody fall into submissions in the past. The club and sub against Mikhaev, then back against Jimmy Flick, even, who has proven not to be a very great fighter at this level. But yeah, man, I mean, I don't know. I'm a little bit surprised by the line. I think it feels like a pick 'em, so the value's definitely on Durden here. It opened up, I think, even wider, and it's narrowed since. But yeah, I mean, we saw in the Tim Elliott fight, one of my bigger hits on an underdog was taking Elliott against Tagir. Tagir did start to fade late in that fight, and Cody, a bit of a slow starter, but like you said, he really comes on late. So I don't know. It does feel like a good matchup for Durden. As always the case with flyweights, I do want to see how these guys look at weigh-ins. Tagir is going to have reach on the feet. Does a decent job keeping things standing when he needs to, but I don't know. Just something feels a little weird in this one. I could see Durden getting it done. I just think this is a super competitive fight. So if you're going to be in a near coin flip, it makes sense to just be on the value side. Another fight I need to spend a little bit more time on. Wouldn't be surprised to see my pick flip, but for now I'm with you. I do think Durden's the side. I do think he can hang on the feet long enough to kind of take over late as he weaponizes his cardio. But again, tough matchup. Certainly one that could go either way.
Yeah, and if it is super close, super back and forth, line to go to decision, I think that favors Durden. I think those, latter half of round two, round three are likely going to be going his way. So, yeah, perhaps a dog you'll want to take. This next fight as well, Andre Feely, minus 170, the favorite against Lucas Almeida, who could be had plus 140 or so. This is one I still want to dig a bit more into. So for an official pick, you will want to check out our write-up on Dine Sports. But Almeida's going to be live in this spot, and Feely is never somebody I like to trust as a favorite nearing minus 200. In the past 4 years, he's 2-4 with one no contest. And both of those wins came by split decision. He's not really been putting on convincing showings as of late. He's going to be good landing kicks from range, and one would think he wants to grapple here, given what we've seen Almeida show deficiency on the mat in his matchup against Pat Sabatini. But if he's not able to grapple, if these two are striking, Almeida should be able to counter off those long range weapons of Feely. If he's throwing a lot of kicks, things like that, I think Almeida should be able to crash in and land a lot of shots on Feely, who we've seen touched up, we've seen chin before, and certainly wouldn't be surprised to see it again. So I'm still torn on this fight. I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think Philly's the better technical fighter pretty much everywhere here. The one fear is that he is a little bit chinny, and Almeida does have power. So that's what's giving me pause from backing Philly aggressively. I do think he's going to wrestle here, though, averaging over 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. Almeida just a 40% takedown in the UFC. Almeida's looked decent at times, but really not against the highest level of competition. Sliced through by Sabatini on the mat. He KO'd Trezano, then they cut Trezano right after. It was almost like they were trying to set up Trezano for a win as the former Ultimate Fighter champion. Didn't get it. And they were like, dude, we teed this one up for you. What happened? So they let him go. But I don't know. I like Feely here. I think he's the better fighter. Even though he lost to Nathaniel Wood, I think he gave a really good showing of himself against a high-level competitor. The Algeo fight as well. I mean, I rate Algeo pretty highly, and he looked good in that win. So he's been competitive against really solid level of competition. Almeida does have that equalizer in his hands, but not something I'm usually betting on, especially as an underdog. So I do like Feely here to get it done, but I will say I am a little afraid of Almeida by knockout as the upset. Gonna go with Feely here, but yeah, I hope he just tucks his chin.
All right. Next up, we have a heavyweight matchup to break down. Martin Budai facing UFC debuting Shamil Gaziev, representing the Kingdom of Bahrain. Undefeated prospect, Dagestani born. Somebody I'm a bit confused as to why he's facing a very good heavyweight in Martin Budai. Martin Budai is somebody who, while his fights have not been the most aesthetically pleasing, somebody who's printed money for me since joining the UFC. He is great at executing a game plan. He marches forward. He holds guys up against the cage. It was pretty productive aggression. I mean, he keeps punching. He's able to eat shots. Obviously, we saw him in a poor showing fight against Lucas Bresky that he was gifted a decision win. But nonetheless, I think Budai does deliver what is promised. A huge heavyweight, somebody who is going to wear on you. And just in this spot, I think Gaziv, to be plus, obviously it's heavyweight MMA, anything can happen, but this guy's resume does not look very good. I don't think he should be facing a quality competition of a guy like Budai. And the key for me in this fight is Gaziv does his best work grappling, and I really don't see him doing so to great effect against a guy in Budai who grapples himself and has such a significant size advantage over most heavyweights. I think Budai is going to be the more fresh fighter in the latter half of this bout, somebody who has not fought high level competition for extended periods of time in Gaziv facing him. So I do like Badai, especially where this line is at current, whether it be he just wears on him and makes this as boring a fight as possible, or, he lands those knees, he keeps punching, and he's able to get this guy out of here. I really don't see Gaziv as the highest level of, UFC heavyweight, but that's not saying very much. Here's your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on Gaziv, but I think I disagree on Renee. I don't think he's very good. I mean, most of his wins have come against very low level of competition, guys we've seen cut from the UFC. A narrow decision win over Jay Collier, a gifted decision over Bresky, as we said. That Barnett fight was super weird. And I mean, yeah, he got the Kimura on Parisian, but Parisian's one of the worst heavyweights on the roster. Gaziv's going to be dangerous early. He almost always is. He does have finishing upside, but it seems like he gasses if he can't find that finish. Boudet, if anything, has been durable, does have the cardio, so that's why I'm backing him here. But to me, this is a low-level matchup, man. Like, I'm really not impressed by either of these guys. I mean, Gaziv's listed at 6'4". I'm very much looking forward to these guys facing off. I don't buy it. I think he's shorter than that. But yeah, man, like, I can't feel great backing Boudet just because he's been, I don't know, not all that impressive against a low level of competition. And I agree that he should get it done here, but at the same time, this is heavyweights. There's a lot of volatility. Gaziv has decent jiu-jitsu. If he does somehow get this fight to the mat or can find his way on top, I do think there's finishing upside for him. So I don't know. I'm with you on Boudet, but it's not a confident play. And to me, these are kind of similar guys, but different strengths. I think Gaziv's the better finisher, but the much worse gas tank. Boudet kind of slow, takes his time doing things. Did find that nice Kimura on Parisian, but it was right there for him. So I don't know. I don't have much confidence. I'm with you on Boudet. I'll reluctantly spend a little bit more time researching this one, but I do think you're on the right side, and Boudet's the rightful favorite. It's just, man, I don't feel great about either of these guys, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, and I feel like I've backed Budai at worse odds before against better competition than this. So I am going with him again here. I think it's at this number a good spot. And lastly, we get to the card opener. So this card starting likely 6:30 at this point with one bout scrapped. We have Randy Brown here, minus 270 against Muslim Salikov. Pretty sizable underdog. I'm interested in your thoughts in this spot. I do think that Brown's going to be the pick for me, but certainly where these odds are at seem a bit off. A lot of people doubting Salikov, now 39 years old, nearly 40, not taking punches very well. Not that he ever really did. But both these guys, known for the knockdown, known for getting knocked down. I suppose Brown's a bit more consistent and a bit more present in the latter half of fights than somebody like Salikov, but I view both guys as pretty chinny. I'd hope that Brown can use those long-range weapons to keep out of the pocket with Salikov, kind of fade that power for the early half of this fight, and maybe take over late. He has a significant advantage in terms of his reach in the spot. I think he is going to be able to keep that distance better against Salikov than most of his previous opponents. It's just he leads with his chin so much. I really worry about him getting clipped by a guy who, that power has not gone yet for Salikov. As close as he's gotten to 40, he certainly can still crack. He can certainly still knock guys down. knock guys out at this stage of his career. So it's a juicy line. It's almost begging you to take Salikov here. But I do think Brown is the much more complete fighter. Both guys can grapple a bit too, but if either guy's taking it to the mat here, I think it's Brown. I think he's executing with his grappling. So he's going to be the side for me in this spot, as tempted as I am to fire on Salikov.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I'm taking Brown. If this was a few years ago and this was the same price, I definitely love Salikov as an underdog. One thing I disagree on, I do think if a fighter is going to take it to the mat, it is probably Salikov over Brown. He did recently shift camps to American Top Team, has been mixing in the wrestling a little bit more. I don't think he wants to stand at range with Randy Brown too much here, even though he is known as the king of Kung Fu. The thing with Salikov, he does still have some of that power, but he's definitely slowed down. I really haven't been all that impressed with Brown. That Turman fight, not the best look. Very, very narrow and competitive win. But yeah, I do think he has the speed. I do think he should be able to fight at distance. 8-inch reach advantage is nothing to sneeze at. And yeah, both these guys pretty accurate strikers, pretty solid defensively. But I just think we see the bigger shots from Brown. I think he does have the better cardio. Salikov, if he could maybe mix in a few takedowns, steal a round or two, it wouldn't shock me to see him pull off the upset. But it's just hard for me to get there, given the age, given how he has looked slower and slower every time we see him fight, especially that last time out against Dalby. So I don't know. I think this is definitely more competitive than the line suggests. If there is a value side, it probably is Salikov, but I'm having trouble getting there right now, just given his recent performances. Again, not too high on either of these guys, but I do think Brown's the rightful favorite.
All right. Well, it should be a great card this weekend. UFC 296, Edwards versus Covington. As always, we appreciate those listening. Please check out our full write-up with official picks for every fight on Dine Sports come Saturday morning. Nick, as always, it was a pleasure breaking this card down with you. Everyone, hope you enjoy UFC 296 from Las Vegas this Saturday.
Thank you, everyone.